From reaching trail to the Great March, from the aging ocean to the endless sea, from Fisherman's Row to Godcroft's. Live from Studio A in PressCorps World Headquarters, this is Foxhole Flash, bringing you the latest news from across the Siva Valley war zone.
Live at PressCorps World Headquarters, I'm Everett Way. It is currently day 118 in the 71st conflict of the war. The total soldier enlistments at the moment is at 2,635, with total casualties exceeding 1,619,000 deaths in its totality. On the field, soldiers have been seen with the most recent tech being heavy artillery on the field, and we have live reports of that heavy artillery and other equipment being used in every region of the war. This war is still raging and has yet to conclude, and we're going to skip to the weather before anything else. Currently, we have two weather reports to start with. There is a mild storm watch currently in the area of Shackled Chasm, centered around the Colonial logistics town of Silk Farms. There's a chance for the rainstorm to get worse. It might subside completely, but this storm has been going on for several weeks at this point. It's very light. There is not a lot of intelligence impediment at the moment. There's not a lot of mud either, but this storm has been sitting for quite some time. We do not know if it will get better or worse for either side just yet. Similarly, in the north, in Viper Pit, we have a winter storm watch. There is light snow occurring in the area of Kirknell and the surrounding sub-regions of Viper Pit. The snow is not accumulated. There is no severe chance of freezing to death, as we have heard from previous storms and blizzards in other regions. No rivers have been frozen over. Shelter is not necessary. However, keep an eye on that weather, and if it gets worse, please report it to us. We may report it to the rest of our listeners and report it to each other to stay safe. Stay tuned to PressCorps for more information in the future regarding the weather. For frontline news, starting in the east in Tempest Island, earlier this week, there was a large Warden push into Tempest Island from the region of Alchemio Estate. While that engagement has gone on for quite some time, not much ground has been taken or lost. It has mostly been a stalemate in that area. Colonials and Wardens alike fighting across the unnamed island in between Alchemio Estate and the Rush. That fight is due to continue for some time, though it seems that some skirmishing has moved over to Lost Archyle. In Endless Shore, we have seen mild skirmishing in the area of Enduring Wake and much earlier in the day, Iron Junction. Not much to report there. Yesterday, we were seeing a massive Colonial push into Saltbrook Channel. It held at the walls of the logistics town as Wardens pushed back with a combination of infantry and artillery from across the river. No Colonial presence in majority has been seen in the Saltbrook area since. Further west in Marbin Hollow, not much action for the past several days except for the town of Spit Rocks. It is a relic base that was recently destroyed, and then, as the Colonials put it, tapped. It means that the research of that relic base, if you will, has been reset. Its basic provisions has been brought down to its lowest levels. This means that the garrisoned infantry in that relic base will not fire on any hostiles in that area, and it is up to any soldier-made bases for local defenses. This is a weakening of the Warden defenses in the Marbin Hollow area. However, since that destruction took place, the Wardens have taken back and fortified Spit Rocks itself. Further west in the Deadlands, fights are still breaking out often. However, no major offensive has been seen by either side recently. The Colonials had taken Sun's Hollow and are looking to push into Liberation Point. The Wardens are looking to push back. It's where the major fight is happening in the Deadlands currently. Lockmore has seen much action in the past several weeks of the war, everything from the Colonials owning all territory south of the River Mersey, down to Colonials holding for their last defenses in the town of Fearmore. At one point earlier, Wardens surrounded the entire town and Colonials took it back. Now the open stretches of fields to the south of Lockmore are largely barren of Warden and Colonial presence alike, fighting now occurring in the beaches and the bridges to the west of the town. In Westgate, we have major activity in the Gallows, which has gone back and forth, traded hands for the Colonials and Wardens for the past several days. The Wardens have been staging a multi-day push into Sanctuary, and when that finally broke for the Colonials, it was not long for the Gallows to fall. The Wardens finding themselves fighting literally uphill into massive fortifications that the Colonials have been preparing for some time. The Colonials pushed back and took the Gallows earlier today. That area is now going a bit back and forth from what we've heard as soldiers in the field. It's unsure how that situation will resolve. It is still happening. It is one of the larger fights in the regions. And finally, going back east to a region that I skipped was Drowned Vale, where we see a majority of the action happening today, and even at this very moment. Hours ago, the Wardens, spearheaded by the regiment 82nd Dread Corps Legion, pushed south from Lockheed into the Salt Caps, taking that in a surprise by what we are sure is everybody on the field. The Colonials had a staunch defense, but it was not enough for the combined Silverhand and heavy artillery bombardment. That took Salt Caps fairly easily, from what we understand and have heard from the Warden perspective. The safe house fell sometime afterwards. Singing Serpents only had minor defenses, and now the Wardens are swiftly pushing into the Baths, where the Colonials are holding their greatest defense of this war so far. Live in the field, we do have one of our Colonial correspondents, Mari Sharp, at the Baths, ready to report live. Mari, can you hear us in the studio?
Hello? Hello, am I coming through? 1, 2, fuck you.
Mari Sharp, are you there?
Yes, live from Baths here in Drowned Vale. It's day 247.
From our Colonial correspondent in the field at the Baths. And until we get that patched in, we can...
Day 247, hello, am I coming through now?
Here we are. Yes, now you are. Aha. I was about to start reporting from what I've heard over the radio, but we've got you now, Mari.
That's quite alright. Well, looking at the situation here in the Baths, it's fucked, but it's not truly fucked for the Colonials quite yet. Colonials holding steady from two angles here in the northeast quadrant of the Baths, where the Wardens have had a long drive from their initial breakthrough at the Salt Caps through the Singing Serpents and down into the bridge crossing that leads into the Baths itself. From the southern direction, the Colonials appear to have about 2 to 3 Falchion light or medium tanks. Truthfully, I don't know which one they are. Colonials, they come off the line like light tanks, and they're treating them like light tanks, but I hear the medium tanks. Either way, also supporting that push is 1 light tank, 1 Pelagese tank destroyer, a half-track, and a tankette hitting the Wardens from multiple angles. Also, additionally, from the west is another Falchion tank and some infantry in a destroyed house. I can't quite tell how many Wardens there are working in the sector, but a sizable armor force has crossed the bridge, but barely moved away from it. we're looking at approximately 3 silver hands, 2 or 3 scout tanks, possibly 4 silver hands now, 5 or 4 or 5, and certainly a light tank supporting it and plenty of infantry to go around. The shells are flying both for the Wardens and the Colonials, but the Colonials appear to have the upper hand right now, might be in part due to their slightly longer range, and by slightly I mean an extra 100 meters from that Thunderbolt, that deadly Thunderbolt. And as I'm approaching here near the front lines, we're approaching here this kind of front line house at the corner of hell and shit as the Colonials attempt to hold out from broken bathtubs and whatnot.
So we're seeing the heavy artillery Thunderbolt, that's the new Colonial heavy artillery, in action at the bats?
That is correct. I can only confirm that because the shells are landing squarely along the Warden line, and the Colonials are sitting pretty with plenty of all kinds of firepower raining from both the south and the west, and again at this corner house. You can hear those shells landing. I think they're coming through. Are they coming through?
Oh yeah, they're coming through. I hear explosions very close. Please stay safe over there. So you're saying the Warden tanks have moved south of the bridge there and are holding. From the radar, what I see is a lot of Colonial infantry in the area. Are they doing well with the new anti-tank equipment that they have?
That is correct. I'm seeing some Ignifis, some of those one-use darlings, and plenty of tripod weaponry. I forget that the name escapes me exactly, but those things do pack a punch. Maybe they can't quite take out a Silver Hand on their own, but certainly threaten the light tanks and keep the Silver Hands on their toes. Right now, it looks like the Warden infantry is attempting to hug the eastern end of the island, and hug is what they can. Because keep in mind that, oh my goodness, that was a shell that landed quite close, but I think I'm okay. And it's certainly angling here as the the Colonials. Colonials have an anti-tank emplacement just on the other side of that wall, which actually brings me to what I was trying to mention earlier. A destroyed section of the wall, the famed bulwark that cuts east and west all across the war zone. But particularly here at the bats, it runs through the bats, and there are several destroyed sections, monoliths it seems, that now have roads through them. And the Colonials are using them effectively, trying to round the corner here as the Wardens hug the walls themselves, and are trying to place sandbags, mines, and all sorts of emplacements to try and get an angle on the Colonials. But Colonials do see it coming, and it's some brutal urban fighting here as the shells are now landing past my location, and plenty of rounds also whizzing by my head here.
I see. So we're hearing that Warden artillery is landing on the bats, but I have not seen much about Colonial artillery landing on the tanks. Or is the Colonial artillery targeting Warden infantry, targeting their Warden lobby line?
I'll tell you what, at the current moment, it appears that the Colonial artillery is just a bit more active than the Warden one. But the Warden one's certainly not shying away either. And where those shells are landing, I think they might have just destroyed the AT emplacement. I'm not quite sure. I think I've lost sight with it proper.
It seems out of sight range at this point, and with the fight so chaotic as it is, it might be hard to see. That's all right. The Colonial tanks in that area, are there any armor regiments that are commanding them, or is it just a grab whatever tank you have, doesn't matter how organized, last-ditch defense?
Looks like the latter, but there are some groups working together within their own tanks. And I believe we have members of the Vox Regiment looking towards the in one tank, as well as I'm not quite sure, I think the Raid working in another. It might be a Pelakes in a tank yet. But either way, plenty of armor moving in and about the area as the Wardens try and keep this split going for the Colonials. But plenty of action, more to come as the Wardens continue to pour troops, pour manpower, pour materials all across that bridge. Wardens really don't have any flanking options, wider flanking options, for them to be able to properly get them going.
I was actually about to say that. It seems that their only entrances from Singing Serpents, the next entrances out to the sides, are either going to be to push through Loggerhead or to push through Bootnap. For those who might not be as familiar with the map itself, Baths only has 4 entrances by ground. There are 4 bridges connecting from the northeast, the northwest, southeast, and southwest. The Wardens now are pushing in from the northeast direction, and the next bridge over in either direction on the compass, if you will send the Wardens through another chunk of Colonial defenses before making their way into the baths. It will not be an easy path for them to take, considering that the Warden's closest logistics town would be Saltbrook, and that's kind of half of a logistics town, whereas the Colonials have a logistics town, even if it's half, but it's right there. They are attacking the logistics town itself, and that's always an uphill battle, no matter which side is pushing into that.
Indeed, and touching on what you said earlier, it's a very interesting composition in terms of how this armor is laid out between the Wardens and the Colonials. Now, you had mentioned, I can't confirm this myself because I am embedded with the Colonials, and it's quite hard to get close when you're coming from the Colonial line. But if what you say is true, the Wardens appear, or rather reportedly, is comprised mostly of the 82 DK. Meanwhile, the Colonials, in their part, they're kind of scattered, but still grouped up within their own armor pieces. For instance, we have one falchion crewed by the Vox Regiment, Pelakes crewed by the Raid Regiment. Another one, kind of a smorgasbord of gas, wrecked in Vox. And really, a tankette crewed by the CUM Regiment, light tank by 157D, a half-track by BCX. Again, maybe not large regiments, commanding multiple vehicle assets, but certainly vehicles crewed by the same regiment and working together in what ways that they can. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does, and that does attribute to how the Colonial faction is overall organized. Lots of smaller groups compared to the much larger organization on the Warden side. We did hear that 82 DK was the regiment that has been taking responsibility, if you will, for the Salt Caps and Singing Serpents captures earlier today. And this is the deepest that the Warden faction has pushed into the Drowned Vale in this war, and especially this late in the war with as many destructive and explosive tools as both sides have. It's a fairly dire situation for the Colonials. How is the morale on the Colonial side now that they're pushing in on one of the most dear logistics bases to their hearts?
That's a great question, and I think I have a chance right here to survey some of that feeling. Hey, Sergeant Noitanis, can you hear me?
Yeah.
My name's Mike Sharp. I'm with the PressCorps. You're currently live on the air on Twitch radio services. Tell me, you're lugging that huge machine gun around. How are you personally feeling at this moment in the middle of this hellish landscape?
Well, to be fair, it's kind of stressful, but I have managed to stave off a couple of, enemies trying to kill our heavy tanks, so I feel I'm doing my part at least.
It sounds like it. You're doing great. Tell me, what are the pros and cons? What are the risks of lugging that thing around?
Well, it's really heavy, and you are really slow, and if someone comes rushing at you, you do not have time to react.
So tell me, with the shells flying well past our position now, how does that make you feel?
Mobility is an issue.
Right, with the shells flying past our heads now, past our position now, do you feel uneasy holding such a stationary object while the shells are hitting all around?
Well, in this particular instance, we are pushing forward, so all the enemy shells are slightly ahead of me. I will have to move up, which is a bit worrying, but anything to keep our heavy boys safe.
Absolutely. Do you think you'll be able to drive the Wardens off of this island?
Without a doubt. I mean, we have substantial reinforcements. They are being pushed as we speak. We
I see a crate down there. Is that a tank box?
The safe house, but with the reinforcements, we are actively pushing them back
Are
down.
there shells in that?
Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, and good luck to you.
Yeah, thank you.
That was Sergeant Noitanis, unaffiliated, but he's currently overreaching some heavy weapons to try and keep that infantry at bay. And in fact, we're going to go up here now to Lieutenant Colonel Spoon of the Raid Regiment. Hello. I don't know if you can get time to talk right now.
Go for it.
Go for it. All right. Well, that's good. That's good. Tell me, how confident are you that you'll be able to not only push the Wardens off of this island, but also keep them on their side of the bridge, prevent further attacks?
Fairly optimistic. You can see how many people are blowing up the shell crate at the moment.
Right. You know, when the initial, I don't know how long you've been stationed here in the past several hours, but when that Warden army group smashed through salt caps, blitzed down Singing Serpents, and is now here at the Bats, managed to break into the Bats. What was the response like for the Colonials when the Warden stepped foot on this island?
I think we didn't expect them to get across the bridge so quickly, and then suddenly there was 5 or 6, 7 Silverhands across the bridge, and it was a bit of a shock. I think we were hoping to hold them a lot more on their side of the bridge.
Yeah, so a little bit of a surprise, no doubt, but it seems the response has been noteworthy so far. Are you working with any other regiments? Certainly, you're helping to organize the raid forces, but it seems like a kind of a gangbang of kind of a rainbow coalition of all sorts of groups. Do you think, or not do you think, but rather, are you working with others? On other communications, or is this more local, kind of ad hoc?
I think this is more local. I don't think we were expecting to have to put up such a fight, but we've got a couple of arty crews now firing this, and I think a lot of clans came together very quickly to organise a pushback. Mm-hmm.
And lastly, about the Warden artillery that's been kind of hitting around us and behind us as well. Are you at all worried about the Warden artillery hitting any further, hitting any critical points, hitting the groups of armor?
No, not so far. I think our armor's more mobile than theirs, so I think we're okay.
Understood. Well, Lieutenant Colonel Spoon of the Raid Regiment, good luck to you, and stay safe out there.
Take care.
Well, as you can see, they are caught off guard, but spirits actually do seem to be high, and that makes sense considering that the momentum is firmly in Colonial hands as sundown begins to happen here on day 247 of the war. Visibility now down to 30 meters, but that won't have truly much of an effect on the bridge battle that's certainly about to develop here as the Wardens fall back north across the bridge.
I see. Thank you very much. For those just tuning in, we are reporting live from the Bats in Drowned Vale. Mari Sharp is on the ground as our Colonial correspondent in the northeast quadrant of the island there at the Bats. The Wardens, spearheaded by 82DK, has pushed south from Lockheed into Salt Caps, Singing Serpents, and blitzed into the island of the Bats. The Colonials have put up an extremely quick, last-second defense of the area. They have been defending as much as they can the entire way, but this being so close to their logistics hub in the region, the Colonials are not holding anything back from the sounds of what Mari is sharing here. A little bit of every regiment is coming to help in the defense. Mari, the sergeant that you were talking to earlier, said that the Colonials are pushing back against the bridge. Do you see momentum swinging back? It's kind of what you were mentioning earlier.
Right, the momentum swinging back to the Wardens. I don't think so. As night falls and the Colonials appear to be on the rampage, fiercely trying to reclaim their island borders, I don't think the Wardens, at least until maybe several hours from now, as the Wardens regroup, because they did lose a number of armor assets, including scout tanks and I believe a Silverhand, at least one Silverhand. Also a couple of captured Pelakis light tank destroyers, or rather tank destroyers, but I can't quite confirm what the status of those are. Either way, currently at this very moment, Colonial armor is on the southern side of the bridge leading to Singing Serpents, which means this has devolved into a bridge fight. Good for the Colonials as they buy themselves some time to replenish supplies, replenish manpower, replenish defenses, and think about how they manage to not just keep the Wardens on the north side of the river, but potentially even attack forward or attack from some other direction, which is going to be quite interesting because the Wardens, having owned Salt Caps and Singing Serpents, also have an attack option at Loggerhead, and if you zoom out, potentially even at Bootnap. So this region is far from a one-trick pony for the Wardens.
Absolutely, and that brings me to my next question. This is more speculation that I'm asking your part on, since you're on the front line there and you see what options the Colonials have at the moment. With the fight devolving into a bridge battle, as you will, those are notorious stalemates, as many soldiers die one side or another, just how small that choke point can be. Very easy to halt any advance across. So with the bridge fight coming, what tools do you see either side using to break that stalemate? We can obviously guess artillery is going to be an option. What else do we see coming out of either side to break that stalemate?
Well, you mentioned artillery, and I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be 90% artillery in terms of wearing down the other side of the river, other side of these various creeks that make up the Drowned Vale. And it is a hellish sight right now as Colonial armor is backing away. The Wardens, the Colonials, actually both sides might be inclined to destroy the bridge altogether by themselves sometime and just kind of reinitiate battle later on, potentially at sunrise or potentially at maybe even during the night, but that might not be such a great idea considering how much of a bottleneck this whole sector is. Currently 1945 hours, which means we've got plenty of nighttime to work with, plenty of nighttime to cover, and the builders are certainly going to enjoy it until the flares start dropping. In fact, I think I might even talk with some of the engineers here. Hello, Sergeant CDW 4563 of the BOS Regiment.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes. Tell me, with the Wardens pushed off the island for now, they're on the north side of the bridge, and plenty of action seems to be happening in the periphery. What are you going to focus on as an engineer here, trying to rebuild the defenses, or reclaim the sector, reclaim the area? What are you going to prioritize in your personal opinion?
Actually, as of right now, I'm not a engineer. I'm actually a forward observer. We're waiting for more rounds to come in for our batteries.
I see. Okay, well, yeah, I'm going to shift completely. Forward observer for an artillery battery certainly cannot disclose where the artillery is located. Is it but whether it's mobile artillery or fixed artillery. But what are you going to be focusing on for the foreseeable future as nighttime comes around? Are you going to be launching shells during the dead of night? Are you going to be pre-sighting it and saving it for a second attack? What do you think?
Well, first things first, we are going to want to find out where their strongholds are. We are going to find out where they're gathering a lot of supplies. We do have multiple batteries being put in place, so they're going to be varying ranges. But once we get a fixed emplacement and we have all of our ammo ready to go, we will be, and I quote, lighting them the fuck up.
Lighting them the fuck up. That's a quote you can put on the headlines. Do you think the logistics is going to be able to keep up with the amount of firepower you're going to start slinging on the other end of that tube?
Well, at this time, there's only a very few amount of people that we can trust at the moment. I will put down on the record, and hopefully this will boost a little bit of confidence in people, that we are running short of logistical people who are periodically bringing the correct materials up to the front line for us. The sooner that they kind of get their head out of their ass and get that figured off, then we should be able to push a little bit better once we have more logistical support.
Some harsh words, but maybe it might be appropriate. Or maybe you're listening and telling this guy to go fuck himself. But either way, from the BOS Regiment, CDW 4563. Tell me, what does BOS stand for again?
Okay, the bridge is down.
BOS stands for the Battalion of Steel.
Battalion of Steel. Sounds like a very noble brotherhood indeed. But tell me, is that a newer regiment, or has it been around for a while?
It is fairly new. I would probably say about a couple weeks.
A couple weeks. Well, we'll see. Plenty of new ones popping up left and right, and that's certainly good to see with the amount of people that are being dumped into this conflict. But yeah, certainly. Good luck to you. The shells are hitting quite close, so maybe you want to get on that counter battery soon enough.
An entertaining conversation with that, Sergeant. Interesting, pointed out the struggles of logistics and holding a last-second defense. Even in a logistics town, there's always going to be some confusion and chaos in this war. And we knew that chaos was going to be coming with all the new changes that happened in this war, but on such a scale, it is very hard to predict. Does it feel rather chaotic on the front now that it's stabilized, or are both sides still kind of slugging it out?
It certainly feels more stable now that that bridge is down, as you might have heard in the background just a bit ago. The bridge has been destroyed, probably by both sides, deciding that this fight is over. And at least for now, this initial assault has failed for the Wardens. The Colonials managing to rally. Certainly a surprise. It seemed like with that massive retreat from all the way from Salt Caps, Bats itself might fall. But the Colonials drew the line in the sand and the waters and said, "No, this is not happening. We're gonna fight back with all we can." And even though the shells are continuously flying, there will be casualties, and there will be rapid, hurried defenses being built out and about. It's certainly more stable now that the Wardens, whether they decide to attack again here or attack further west towards Loggerhead or somewhere else entirely, who knows? But for now, I think this fight is over.
At least this stage of the fight it is nowhere near over, at least seeing from the outside, much bigger perspective on the strategic level. As was mentioned earlier, the 82nd Dreadcorps Legion led an assault into Drowned Vale, one of the first major assaults we've seen into that region from the Wardens since the beginning of the war. There were light skirmishes at the beginning of the conflict, and now we're seeing a major push held with tanks, silver hands, they're light tanks, heavy artillery now. This combined arms approach doing them wonders as they have taken both the Salt Caps and Singing Serpents. This closes out a rather large land mass connecting Lockheed and Old Jack Tar and Enduring Wake, which are three places that the Colonials pushed yesterday, actually, with good success at the start, and then were pushed out once they started to move outside of that general area. As we mentioned before, the Colonials were moving into Saltbrook Channel yesterday. The Wardens pushed them back, took Old Jack Tar and Enduring Wake, and have now pushed into Salt Cap Singing Serpents and almost securing a solid foothold into the Bats. This warpath is not an easy one to route, and I think one of the major advantages that the Colonials had in holding this offensive back is the simple topography of the swamp that is the area. Holding a choke point like a bridge is much, much easier than holding the open ground that Salt Caps or Singing Serpents tends to be. What other options do the Colonials have? I'll ask this as one of the last questions here. What should the Colonials be doing from here in order to re-secure Drowned Vale?
Well, as I find myself scavenging one of the garrison houses for a bite to eat, I think it's going to... Hold on, I'm sorry, I got distracted by that shell. What was... I don't know if you can hear it. But there's Colonial light artillery going tit for tat in the background in my immediate position. Can you repeat the question?
Oh, it's all good. I was just going to ask for your final thoughts here. What do you believe the Colonials' next step is going to be in taking back Drowned Vale, if you think it is possible for the Colonials to do so?
For sure. Well, we saw it in Westgate, Fortress Westgate. And when the Wardens broke through and managed to take the gallows, not by sanctuary, no doubt, but actually by naval landing, so nearby. So keeping your eyes open, but hunkering down and drawing a line in the sand is pretty much all you can do until something monstrous were to be thrown into the fray. But without battle tanks, and I don't think we're going to see those anytime soon. But until perhaps maybe even a rocket might be able to break the ranks. But I don't think they're going to waste it anywhere near. I don't think the Colonials are going to waste it in their own region. So for now, it's all about hunkering it down, winning or outlasting the Warden artillery, and eventually mustering enough forces while also maintaining what little you can to defend, but mustering enough forces to launch a counterattack and truly break the Warden position at Singing Serpents and eventually Salt Caps. Because if the Colonials can take back Salt Caps and really lock it down with the same fervor that they did with the Bats, then they might have yet a chance of stabilizing this whole region. But until then, it's going to be a tit for tat. It's going to be a back and forth until the collies can truly muster a force and win, not just by not losing, but win by concertedly attacking.
I see. Certainly an uphill battle for the Colonials, them being on the back foot, the receiving end of this offensive. It's going to be just as hard for them to push back out and retake this territory. This fight is nowhere near over. It's still, I wouldn't even say it's resolving. I think we are at the middle of this fight, and we will be watching it very closely over the next couple hours. Mari Sharp out in the Bats in Drownvale, thank you very much for your excellent reporting on the front line.
Absolutely.
Again, that was Mari Sharp at the Bats in Drownvale. We're going to go to a small music break. We will be back very quickly with some more frontline reporting. There is much action happening around all regions. Again, in Westgate, we have the Gallows and a massive Warden push in there. Fearmore has been hot action for many, many days at this point. And out in Tempest Island, there are large fights as well, including possible naval combat in that area. Even Alod's Bite, one of the Colonial backline regions, has been seeing Scurvyshire under siege for several days now. It almost seems like a regular defense in that town. We will get you news from the Colonial and Warden perspective in the hours and minutes coming up, but for now, we're going to cut to some music. We'll be back very shortly. Don't touch that dial. PressCorps will be right back.
You're tuned to 121.5 WPRSS Sunhaven.